hours for the Ohio Mass Community Assessments and Plan Technical Assistance Series. I am recording the session, as always, and this recording will be placed on our website for future use. I am going to, we'll have the same format as all of our previous calls, but we're going to change up the order a bit because we have a few folks joining us from the department to talk about one of the new components of the CAP that we really haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about. And knowing that we're here in the middle of November and we're just about 2.5 months away from the submission of the 2023-2025 community assessment and plan. One of the components we really haven't talked about a lot is the capital planning component. So this is just to remind everyone and to refresh kind of the conversation and the thoughts behind this is that during the board's planning process through the assessment and the development of the plan for 23 to 25, we asked all of you to kind of keep in mind in the back of your heads potential capital planning needs, funding needs that may arise as a part of your planning process. So we have a kind of a brief blurb about it in the guidance. We've talked about it, we've touched on it here and there, but we really haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about what we mean by kind of keeping capital funding in the back of your mind when developing your CAP. So when you're setting your priorities, your strategies, and those outcome indicators, if you see a need arise for the potential of a capital funding need that could then assist in the implementation of your priorities and your strategies, or would assist in the success of what that potential strategy would look like, we ask you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you approach the capital funding requirement. That's kicking off at the beginning of January 2023 and runs through the first half of the year. So I invited Curtis Smith and Art Wills from our Bureau of Capital Planning and Management to provide just a few moments to talk about capital funding planning and what that may mean for your CAP, and then what that process could look like moving into 2023. And I think we have both of them joining us this morning. So I'll turn it over to them for a few minutes to kind of talk through this. And then we'll open up for any questions that you may have about this in this component of the CAP moving forward. So I want to introduce Curtis Smith and Art Wills of Capital Planning and Management. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone. You're muted, Art.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks for joining us today. So one of the things that Art and I would like to walk through is, as many of you might be new to the capital process, is just what the high-level stance of that looks like. So one of the first things that will occur is sometime in mid-spring, we will send out a memo requesting all of your capital needs. We typically provide funding for number 1 and number 2 priorities. Number 2 priority provision has been a new thing the last couple of biennials, and we're grateful to be able to provide funding for 2 different priorities each year, and we hope that continues. So you guys know your board areas better than anyone. So we send out the memo, and you will be able to have an opportunity to respond with a list of capital projects that you will prioritize 1 through however many you want to send us. We don't always get to them all, as I stated earlier about funding 1s and 2s, but we're glad to have as many as you can possibly send out. That provides us a little guidance for maybe future years, or should additional funding come to be, then we are able to pass that on to our board leaders to do with as you see fit for your different projects that you have shown us. So I'm going to turn it over to Art real quick to give you a little more in depth to what this process looks like from within our office, as far as different types of projects and things like that.
Okay, good morning. So we are currently working on capital applications with community providers for the number one and number two priorities that were submitted uh, regarding the state fiscal years 23 and 24. Um, we're planning for our state fiscal year 25 and 26 biennium. We expect to send that memo out to the boards in the spring of 24. I know the administration at department has been uh, focusing, their priority focus rather has been on housing projects and crisis uh, response type facilities. One thing I wanted to mention here that may be helpful for all of us is when you're completing your community project worksheets as you're submitting those for the next budget biennium, maybe to include a little bit of information on there um, about that particular capital project, how that aligns with elements of the community plan that you're putting together with Chad's office. Um, so if you have any questions about projects that you submitted for the current 23-24 biennium, you can contact our office. Uh, we can work through those with you. If we need to reach out and contact somebody we haven't contacted yet to get a project going and you know that they're ready to go, please let us know. I've seen a couple of emails come in here just since the meeting started. I know we're looking at potentially some additional funding. Uh, so we are here as a resource to help you uh, and guide you through that process. Um, the majority of our projects in the current biennium have uh, been for permanent supportive housing. Uh, and we also have another funding stream that I think is important to mention. Some of you may not know about this, but we have youth resiliency funding that is a separate line item from our usual community capital funding, and that is provided at a 75-25 match split. And there are some unique criteria around the youth resiliency funding for projects that may be suitable to receive that funding as opposed to regular capital funding. Primarily, it involves program space that would provide services for youth, elementary through high school age, that is a community-based resource. It may include programs like after school programming, homework assistance, providing meals or food to take home, uh, mentoring, different elements around there. And oftentimes we see in community projects that take advantage of this funding that it in some cases can dovetail with projects that may already be in place or are in progress as an additional resource. So that is something I would hope you could keep in mind. Um, Curtis, do you have any other information you would like to add?
Yes, I just sent out in the message for everybody to see that, I just want to reiterate this, and it's important. Say youth resiliency funding is first come, first serve, and it does not affect the priority of your other projects. So if you have a priority one
Right.
and two, maybe permanent supportive housing, maybe crisis stabilization, those are still your number one and number two priorities. Youth resiliency funding is above that. It doesn't affect those things. So it's completely outside and separate. And we have some money that's available for that. And I know we have a lot of youth in the state of Ohio that could really use some program space. So from a program space standpoint, this is talking about like gyms, place for them to go and just hang out, play basketball, play games, read books, things like that. I mean, it can really be anything. It just needs to fit the needs of middle to high school aged youth that have some sort of a mental health type situation. And in this day and age, the reality is that is a majority of our youth. So it's easy to fit that criteria, and these projects are I mean, every time we've done one, the communities are just so grateful because of how many good things they do for their students. So,
So thank you. One other thing I would add is that most of the programs that have utilized our youth resiliency funding, this has been a great point of entry and engagement for young people who otherwise may not have that kind of assistance in getting uh, not only access to the program that's being offered through the Youth Resiliency Fund, but oftentimes those programs are helping to connect them to other community services they may need assistance that they may not otherwise be able to access on their own. So that's an important thing to consider. Things like if they are in need of counseling, or they need help getting to some other community resource for help with employment or training. Uh, really, a broad variety of opportunities there.
yep. So something else about our capital office I would like to help folks understand is, so Art is the assistant chief of the bureau, and he leads our community team. His community team is comprised of 3 project managers. So when you think about the state of Ohio as a whole, all 88 counties, we essentially have 3 project managers who are handling projects in all 88 of those counties. Art does handle projects as well, not quite to the same level at this point, as he has other duties with his role as assistant bureau chief. So when we don't get a hold of maybe a potential client or a provider or something like that, maybe as soon as folks would like, there's 3 project managers managing projects for all 88 counties, and there's a lot of need. So they work as hard and as fast as they can. But we do ask that folks just remember there's a lot of weight on their shoulders as they help manage these projects.
Thank you. We will, however, make every effort
Absolutely.
to be in contact with you and to help move the process along. Um, it just, as Curtis says, it may take a little bit longer for us to get through uh, certain things that in the past we were able to do in a matter of days. It may take a week or so, or longer, but uh, that we do want to hear from you,
Right.
and we will be happy to work with you in whatever way we can.
So thank you, Curtis and Art. I mean, that's something that we could draw a direct line to, because we have one of the priority populations, required priority populations for the CAP are our youth. So whether that be adolescents, uh, youth, transition age youth.
Right.
So having that as the youth resiliency funding, so that's a great kind of direct line to what we really hope the boards are able to kind of discuss as they develop their cap is what those capital funding needs may be. And then also really that we have crisis as part of the continuum and the ongoing development in increasing of the crisis infrastructure across the state, what boards may need as far as assistance for capital funding for that as well. So those are 2 very integral components of each of the board's plans. So I appreciate you being able to allow us to kind of draw that direct line to what we're thinking as far as kind of putting those capital funding kind of potential requests in the back of your mind as you're working through your plan. So thank you very much. Two very, very good concrete examples. Any questions while we have Curtis and Art here?
Celebrate your holiday season with the all-new Magic Lights.
So any questions about that or how we're tying funding requirements into that? Daniel.
Hey, gentlemen, good morning. Dan Obertans from Jefferson County. Can you please remind me of who is eligible to apply for the funds? Because I obviously boards, but I thought agencies were also able to apply directly.
Well, yeah, if you mean the provider agencies, yes, the nonprofit, we work with nonprofit organizations who have a public behavioral health mission, either for mental health or substance use services. We do not work with for-profit organizations, and the vast majority of our applicants will be community-based providers. We do have a number of boards who apply directly for funds for capital projects, but the majority of those applicants will be those community-based providers.
And just to follow up, do they need to be an OMOS certified provider?
It depends. It depends on the type of facility that they are planning to build with their project. If licensure certification is an applicable component of that operating that facility, they do not need to have that licensure and certification at the time they initiate their application, but they need to be able to establish that they are in the process of obtaining the appropriate licensure, and ultimately we'll want to see that that is in place, that they are meeting those requirements that licensure and certification have. And we'll, if that's the case with a particular project, we'll be working closely with the licensure and certification office to understand where they are in the process. You know, did they just start their application, or are they midway into the process? And I know in some cases they have to actually be in operation for a certain period of time with, I'm not speaking to this 100% knowledgeably, but I know they have a certain period of time that they have to operate under observation from our licensure and certification office as a requirement for certain licenses they receive. So that it just depends.
Yeah. One thing that they do need though is they need to be backed by the local board and approved by them. And they do not, yes, they submit their application directly to us as we work with them. However, we'll have a worksheet that comes from the board that tells us, you know, who these projects are going to be. So if it's not a provider that hasn't worked with the local board, or is not being supported by them, then we do not tend to work with those either. We tend to send those back to the local boards to create that that connection.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Feel free to turn your mic and camera on or put them in the chat.
Hi, this is Megan with Wayne and Holmes County. I was just wondering, Curtis and Arthur, if you guys would be willing to put your email in the chat. We're kind of we have some newer employees with our board, and so we're looking at doing some capital trainings, and if we could, you know, potentially reach out to one of you to assist with that, that might be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. You're asking for our email addresses, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, any other questions? All right, if not, thank you, gentlemen. I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to kind of talk through this with us as we kind of had this new component that we talked about earlier in the year about adding to the assessment and plan, and just to help the boards kind of preemptively think about what capital funding requests may be needed into the new year. So we do appreciate your time and effort and kind of walking us through this process.
Absolutely, our pleasure. And as we leave you, just want to let you know that our doors are always open. Phones are open, emails open. Feel free to contact us at any time. If you need us to set up a private opportunity for us to go through the entire capital process in more detail, we're happy to do that. Whatever we can do to help support.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
great day.
Thank you.
All right, so we will go ahead and go through the rest of the updates and information for today. I do appreciate the flexibility to kind of change things up a little bit, but we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Curtis and Art to kind of talk through this with us. So we do appreciate their flexibility and yours as well. Just a quick overview of the remaining office hours that we have scheduled. We have Wednesday, December 7th. We do hope to kind of talk through and review the guidance documents that we have created. Wednesday, December 14th, take the majority of the time to walk through the survey portal that you will be using to submit your assessment and plan at the end of January. So we'll take some time to walk through that, answer any questions that you may have about the mechanics of the survey. And then Wednesday, January 4th, continue to review the survey portal, ask any questions, hopefully alleviate any concerns or issues that any of you may have walking through that, and then review the annual update requirements. Again, talk about those dates, when those will be due, and our hopes and plans for what that process is going to look like when you submit that first annual update in February of 2024. And then we have reserved January 11th if needed. That's just a few weeks in front of the end of January deadline. So we will include that if and when needed. And we will make that decision in our first call in January to see if any other issues are arising, any other questions would need to be answered prior to submission of the cap at the end of January. So this is what we have as far as our schedule and what we hope to talk about on these dates. Also, we do have some CAP webinars that we are planning and yet to hold. We do have one scheduled for Wednesday, November 30th from 2:30 to 3:30. That is dealing with the SMART objectives, outcomes and indicators. So we will be reviewing that standardized indicator outcome indicator spreadsheet. That is currently being updated as we speak. HPAO is making some changes to that, some updates to that. And we will have that new one, not significant changes, but some changes around the periphery. One of those had the alignment of some of the indicators that we included in the county profile. It didn't actually make the final draft of the county profile, so we're fixing that. We're also updating some language in some other areas, but the core of that remains the same. That will be one of the topics on the webinar. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a few minutes. We also have a Tuesday, December 10th on hold from 10 to 11 and Thursday, January 12th also on hold from 10 to 11. So if you have any thoughts about some additional information you'd like to see as part of those December and January webinars, please let us know. HPO is also putting together the final revisions on an equity toolkit so we are working on jointly with our diversity and cultural competency group here within the departments and some other staff involved in that as well. We have a final draft, hopefully, that will be ready around Friday of this week. And then we'll release that soon after, once any final revisions are made after the final review. So those revisions are due to HPAO by the end of the week, and they will turn this around and they will release that toolkit on equity and cultural competency as it lends itself to the assessment and plan. And we'll place that information on our website and send out to our larger contact list as well. So look forward to that between now and the end of the month. So I did want to take a few minutes to talk about the webinar on Wednesday, November 30th that we have scheduled. We are expanding that. We currently have it set for 2:30 to 3:30. Your calendar invitation will change here momentarily to go 2:30 to 4. And I'll talk about the reason why here in just a few minutes. But a quick overview. We hope that the boards will be able to understand the purpose of the standardized indicator menu, what it is, how it was developed, the uses for it, understand how to develop SMART objectives, what that looks like, some potential examples. I hope that the boards are aware of the tabs and columns in the indicator menu and how they can be used when potentially using that to identify your outcome indicators for your assessment and plan. Be prepared and equipped to use the indicator menu to develop SMART objectives. And then be prepared and equipped to compile data from selected secondary sources. So we are extending it to 4 o'clock for those of you who would like to stick around. We're going to be doing some demonstrations on some publicly available information on how to really use those publicly available information, data sets, and indicators to then hopefully potentially inform your choices of indicators in your CAP. So completely voluntary, as is the entire webinar, but we are extending another half an hour for those who'd want to stick around and look at some demonstrations. I think we're looking for demonstrations from at least 2 or 3 different publicly available data sources, process on how to get access to that data, how to pull it down, and potentially how to use it then for the development of your plan. So we will be modifying that information to include a 4 o'clock kind of end date in time. And we will also have a couple of other invited guests within the department to participate in that portion of the webinar as well. So I just want to provide you just a brief overview of what we hope to discuss. We will be going through that spreadsheet. We'll be going through examples of the SMART objectives and how that plays into your development of your plan and the outcome indicators. So all that will be available to you, and we will be updating that calendar invitation shortly. And then I talked about it there in the previous slide. Any future webinar topics that you would like to learn a little bit more about? We do have 2 open dates, as we talked about, in December and January for information around the larger assessment and plan. So those are all the updates that I have for you this morning. We kept around the 30 minutes. Yeah, it's 11:29. So open up to any questions that any of you may have through the larger assessment and plan. If you don't feel like asking your questions in front of the group, I will keep this line open until noon to have any sort of discussion or any sort of question and answer period that you may need prior to the ending of this. So we did have a comment. The OACPA membership meeting is scheduled in the same time frame that the outcomes indicator session is happening. Will it be recorded? Yes, we will be recording it and placing it on our website with our equity webinar, which is currently there. Once that's available, we'll send out the link again and provide you with that information that it is available in full review. Any other questions about any sort of aspect for the CAP or the assessment, I guess the assessment or the plan, the CAP as a whole? And if you have any ideas for future webinars, please feel free to shoot me those, and we will get those considered as we continue to work through those conversations with our friends at HPIO. All right, folks, if there are no other questions, I will stop the recording and we'll end this portion of our session. I hope everyone has a great afternoon, great rest of your week, and I will keep this line open until noon for anyone else who may have any questions. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.